picking up in Acts 14, verse 1. It says, "At Iconium, Paul and Barnabas went, as usual, into the Jewish synagogue. There they spoke so effectively that a great number of Jews and Greeks believed. But the Jews who refused to believe stirred up the other Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brothers. So Paul and Barnabas spent considerable time there, speaking boldly for the Lord, who confirmed the message of his grace by enabling them to perform signs and wonders. The people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jews, others with the apostles. There was a plot afoot amongst both Gentiles and Jews, together with their leaders, to mistreat them and stone them. But they found out about it and fled to Lycaonian cities of Lystra and Derbe, and to the surrounding country, where they continued to preach the gospel." So Paul and Barnabas are on this journey, their first missionary journey, and they went to a place called Iconium, which is about 90 miles from Antioch. Now remember, you go 90 miles, yeah, that only takes me like an hour and a half to drive. Now these guys walk there, okay? So yeah, you know, that's a little bit different when we talk about a missionary journey of 90 miles. That's more like going, you know what, I'm going out to evangelize in Uluru this week. What are you doing? Okay. It was also one of these really ancient cities. In actual fact, there was a king there called Nacus, and the phrase was that since the days of Nacus, in other words, since the beginning of time. So this was a really old city, and what you find in old cities, whether it's in England or in China or in India, they have a lot of history, and they normally have a lot of mythological gods and a lot of paganism there. So it's to be noted that Paul and Barnabas were going more and more into the sort of backwaters of Asia Minor here. What does that mean? Well, it means this is more of a lawless place. Okay, so the law is a little bit like the sheriff, and if the sheriff wants to kill you, the sheriff will kill you. The sheriff doesn't want to kill you, but there's no sort of appealing to like, hey, that's just not right. That's not the law. The further you go into the country, the more it's like, well, it's a little bit like home rule. So really, they were in the wild point, and they were under threat of mob violence. To us, that seems really weird. But anybody that comes from a place that's third world, mob violence still happens today. I know some of us are from Pakistan or different places like that, and truth of it is, if somebody screams out, hey, this guy's a thief. I know in Nigeria they used to put a tie around them. There was no trial, put a tie around them, set it alight, just burn them up. Lots of countries still live in that type of situation. We've got to understand that we get very, very soft. You know, we bump our toe and we go, oh, I'm discouraged today, didn't want to pray. We've got to put things in perspective here, okay? But Paul and Barnabas had this sort of system going. They went to a city, and the first place they went to was to God believers. They went to the synagogue. And I saw in Ray, he goes, why is it so hard on University of New South Wales to convert people? I go, because they're Chinese. Well, what's wrong with Chinese? Nothing wrong with Chinese. But most of them don't believe in God. In other words, you've got to do 4 or 5 or 6 studies of the Bible and evidences before you even get to the concept of, hey, would you like to follow God? I remember when we first converted our first Chinese guy, D. You know, to most Europeans you go, you need to believe in God. They go, I don't believe in God. But then they're sort of Christian atheists. They sort of have Christian morals. So most Pete used to work in as a waiter in the Atheist Society of Sydney. So they used to have a lunch every week. You know what they used to talk about? Was God. About how there isn't a God. Because they sort of know there's a God. But I remember when we started with Dean, he was like, why does there need to be a God? So you have to sort of start from further back, don't you? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But here, if you want to be fruitful, walk up to me, do you believe in God? Yeah, great, you're the guy I want to talk to. That's a lot easier. That doesn't mean we don't convert everybody, but that's one of the reasons. Then it said they spoke so effectively, the people became Christians. This is something that we all need to figure out. You can't go, well, Joe speaks effectively or Scotty speaks effectively. Every single person must understand how to convert people. Yeah. You know, what does that mean? Well, first of all, you've got to know your scriptures. Yeah. If you claim to be a Christian and a God believer, you've got to know your scriptures. And where does that come from? That comes from spending at least an hour in the Bible every day. We got with our first meeting by young radicals, okay? And here's the difference between the young prophets and the young radicals. We're going to do things like go street preaching, which I know Solomon is so excited that JT suggested. But, Kerry and I are moving to this, our kids are going to leave us, we're going to be empty nesters, and we're like, we want to be young radicals, so we're going to get in there with young radicals. But you've got to know your scriptures well. We said, look, you've got to read your Bible at least an hour every day. That's not a lot. The Bible's a big book. You've really got to get to know your scriptures. And we talk about how to study the Bible. You've also got to have the ability to present an argument clearly for people to understand. There's a lot of what I call pub talk. In England, we used to sit there at 18 and drink beer and discuss how we could disprove God. Okay? But things have changed now. There are a lot more different arguments. So I was speaking to one person and go, well, my friend said, there can't be a God because what about the LGBT whole issue? I know there's great research done on the fact that some people are born with a predisposition towards feeling like they want sex towards the same sex. You go, okay, does that make it right? Well, you can't blame them. I go, okay, so if I genuinely believe that I'm predisposed towards having sex with 8-year-old children, does that make it right? If I believe that I'm predisposed towards hating black people, does that make it right? So you can't use one argument for one thing and then not use the way that that thinking towards another. There's no right to sleep with an 8-year-old or hate a black person. Absolutely not. In other words, doesn't matter what you predispose towards, it is a decision what you do with that.
Come on.
That's the sort of thing we need to be able to handle and talk through, because these are the arguments coming from the world.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
People go, well, there isn't a God. You can't prove it. Go, can you prove that there isn't a God? Well, I believe in the Big Bang. Okay, who created the Big Bang? Who made it go bang? Who made the matter? Well, I don't know. Could it be God? I don't know. Well, nor do I wasn't there, but you can't. In other words, you've got to get good at debating and discussing with people, etc. like that. How can I trust the Bible? Read it. How do you get to learn to trust a person? You hang out with them, right? You get to know them. Well, you read it, you'll be pretty impressed. I always like it when people go, well, how do I know? What about other religions? I go, okay. I like doing this one. I go, you're sitting there with 4 or 5 people, go, okay, if I came to you today and go, you know what, thank you for meeting me today. God appeared to me last night. He said, I'm the new Messiah. And I'm grateful that you could all come together, and I appreciate you are now my first disciples. Can you give me everything you have and follow me? What would you say? They go, I'm in. You'd say, where's the proof? Okay? I go, yeah, good. So Buddha said, I am the enlightened one. Where is his proof? There is none. He just went, I am the enlightened one. There's no proof. The fact that he lived 2,000 years ago doesn't make him any more right than me coming to you today and going, I'm the new Messiah. Muhammad said, the angel Gabriel appeared to me. Really? Is there any proof? No. You just need to trust me. So, well, did Buddha or Muhammad do any miracles that might prove that? Neither of them did miracles. None. So I appeal to people on logic. Now, if you've got a predisposition towards fighting against the truth, well, you will fight. In other words, we're not looking to try and open people up. We're looking for open people. People that you can reason with. But these are discussions that you need to learn how to have. You need to have the ability to listen well and debate while remaining calm. In other words, if you feel like you're losing the fight, just go, you know what, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. Can I get back to you? Because I don't know everything. I remember this meeting a guy who is in Zoroastrianism. It's a Persian religion. And he said to me, you know what? I believe that the Bible and the prophets in the Bible stole things from Zoroastrianism. Because in Daniel there's the prophecy of the silver tree. He said, that's in Zoroastrianism. And I went, okay, I know Zoroastrianism, but this is a challenge I don't know the answer to. Can I get back to you? And then I went back and studied it and realized that actually Daniel was written 30 years before Zoroastrianism produced that prophecy. So I could go back, but I didn't need to fight him on the spot and go, I don't think, I go, okay, I don't know. It's okay, I'll find out and I'll get back to you. But we need to be great at persuading people. But then great preaching divides people. So here, people are divided, which means you've got to be okay with upsetting people. Our preaching is to disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. In other words, people are not open, they will be offended by our preaching. But people that are open will go, at last, someone who's willing to preach the truth. Our preaching should surface open people. We have a lot of people out to Bible talk right now. I mean, Leo's household, I had to leave because there was no seats. I left to get Sean TV. I mean, the team was just packed. But when you've got a crowd, people need to go, I'm coming back next week, or I'm never coming back. That's what the Bible talks need to do. And then when you have an open mission field, you need to stay there. But you've got to expect persecution when you preach properly. However, never let persecution stop you preaching the gospel.
Come on.
So sometimes this Dean asked India to be his wife last week, okay? That's a tricky conversation to have with the father-in-law. Like traditionally, and there's nothing in the Bible that says you need to do this. Traditionally, you phone up the father-in-law and says, excuse me, sir, I'd like to take your daughter's hand in marriage. Is that okay? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, good. But in a cross-world pollination of countries, where you're literally saying that actually means she's going to live in China with me for the rest of her life and not America, some of the parents aren't too exactly, exciting. So we never ask for permission anymore, we just ask for blessing. I'd like your blessing. No, not on your life. The way we live, the way we think as Christians is always going to get persecution. And it's not necessarily just persecution for walking up and down the street preaching Jesus. It can come in very subtle forms. Persecution from family. People feel like you're disrespectful. But so many people have confused what's biblical with what's church tradition. It's radically different. There are many different cultures. I remember my friend Steve, he married a Ghanaian. He had to go over to Ghana and present, I think it was 7 goats to his wife-to-be's father, etc. like that. And that was what's written. And he could do it, and that was fun and fine. But he didn't have to do it. It wasn't like this is, but in their culture it was fun. But you can't force culture on people. Point 1, make the most of every opportunity. Acts 14:8. In Lystra there sat a man who was lame. He had been that way from birth and never walked. He listened to Paul as he was speaking. Paul looked directly at him, saw that he had faith to be healed, and called out, "Stand up on your feet." At that the man jumped up and began to walk. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lycaonian language, "The gods have come down to us in human form." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, because he was his chief speaker. The priests of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls of wreaths to the city gates because he and the crowd wanted to offer sacrifices to them. But when the apostle Barnabas and Saul heard of this, they tore their clothes and rushed out into the crowd, shouting, "Friends, why are you doing this? We too are only humans like you. We are bringing you good news, telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God, who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything in them. In the past, he let all nations go their own way. Yet he has not left himself without testimony. He has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their seasons. He provides you with plenty of food and fills your heart with joy." Even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowds from sacrificing to them. So what is a real miracle? This man had never walked from birth, meaning that he would have had bones with skin and no well-formed muscles. When he was healed, it didn't say he just got up and staggered. It said he got up to the point where he jumped. People say there are churches done in miracles today. I don't know any church that would claim that sort of miracle. Literally, here's a man that has never walked, and then you see him walk, and you see the muscles form, and he instantly walks. It's normally people who are in wheelchairs that have had a hard time, etc., like this, and they've already got the muscle memory, there's still muscle there, and they manage to walk a little bit. That is not a biblical miracle. Do never ever be confused by what people call miracles. A miracle is a miracle. In other words, it is impossible for a man who has never ever walked to get up and walk and jump. That's why it's called a miracle. Again, some people go, well, how can you believe in the miracles? I was talking to Jen, I just can't get my head around the miracles. Well, do you believe in God? Yes. Do you believe He created the earth? Yes. Well, what is your problem? Which is harder to do, to create the universe or part the Red Sea? I mean, let's be honest. Right. And yet, we've got to be able to talk those things through. Yeah. They were mistaken for gods. I mean, that's a pretty weird thing, right? So they walk in. Well, there was a bit of a tradition to this. Basically, there was a story around Lystra that told that once these gods, Zeus and Hermes, had come to earth in disguise in a city. No one in that land would show hospitality to these two gods, except for two peasants, Philemon and his wife Bacchius. They took them in, so these gods killed everybody else but these two peasants. So when Paul and Barnabas arrived, they went, remember that story? Remember when the gods came amongst us? We're not going to make this mistake twice. So they started sacrificing to them to not make the same mistake twice. It's amazing how much people hold on to mythology. We go, well, we're not, we don't believe in volcano gods anymore, we don't believe in this, we don't believe in that. There are many, many cultures that do, but we have our own mythologies. Science will answer everything. That's absolute hogwash. I was watching this clip of a show this week, and it says, The Boy with No Brain. I don't know if anybody else watched it. A boy was born with only 2% brain. It was a program on television this week. And I went, this kid cannot exist. And there he is at 4 years age, talking and walking around. And they're interviewing the medical people, and they go, we don't know how this works. This is scientifically impossible. This should not happen. He only has 2% brain. And they did scans of him and everything. And the old doctors go, well, it just shows you, in medicine, we really don't know. To me, that is like, so, we think we know everything until we don't know something. And they go, he shouldn't have lived this long, and he shouldn't have done, and he shouldn't, and he shouldn't. Science tells us what we record. But science doesn't tell us everything. This is the difference between science and Christianity. Science doesn't tell you whether men are better than women. Does it? It just says there is a woman and there is a man. So should I treat women equally or should I treat them like dirt? What do you think? Maybe I'll just treat them like dirt because I'm a man and I'm stronger. And after all, women are pathetic. But what's wrong with that? If I'm bigger than you and women are weaker, and what's wrong with that? You see, science doesn't deal with morals at all. Doesn't do like that. And scientists who don't believe in God go, we need to discuss whether this is morally okay. It's God that teaches us that women are equal to men and we are to treat them with great favour. That's why I love God. Because He sorts out what's right and what's wrong. Their reaction was, okay, they didn't go, you know what? You ever been complimented and you go, that's pretty nice. I like that. I don't know what it'd be like, but you going, I'm a God. And you're the speaker. This is pretty nice. But you remember over in Acts 12 what happened with Herod? When everybody went, you're a God! He went, yeah! He was dead 3 days later. So what did they do? We're going to rip our clothes. Stop! I don't want you to tell me I'm awesome. Because I'm in fear of the one that's really awesome to humble me. Yeah. And yet, what do? They keep on preaching. They see it as an opportunity. There is an opportunity. Yeah. Have you invited everybody on your course? Have you invited everybody on your course? Have you invited every old friend? Have you invited everybody at work? Charlotte was sharing with me, she went, I felt so silly. I've got this boss at work, and I feel like I want to invite him, and I was a bit intimidated, and then he sat next to me and he goes, have you got Obed's number? Well, yeah, he's my buddy. Yeah, I know about church and stuff. There are people all around us that are waiting for us to talk to them.
Yeah.
Think about Sean. You know, he had his cousin. I mean, it's great that his cousin became a Christian.
Yeah.
But why wasn't Sean inviting him? Well, he thought, well, I don't live in LA. Now God still loves people, so he puts a Christian who lived next door to him that invited him. But what does that mean? You could be next to somebody that is open, that is somebody's family member. Have you been bold enough to go and knock on your neighbour's door and invite them to church? Point number 2, let nothing stop you preaching. Acts 14 verse 19. This is one of the most hardcore passages, it's amazing. It says, then some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. But after the disciples had gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city. The next day, he and Barnabas left for Derbe. I mean, it's one of those sort of rocky moments, you know. They shot him 10 times, he got up, brushed it off, and went, I'm Captain Marvel. You know what I mean? Like you do about superheroes. Okay, so in the midst of all this excitement, you had these Jews. Maybe they were following him from the old city to persecute him. That's a possibility. The other possibility was a centre of selling corn, so maybe they just came as tradespeople and got mixed up in it. But in all of this, what we see is that Paul and Barnabas were preaching in an outpost of a Roman colony that basically was unsafe. It was just lynching law right here. And yet they were willing to go to places where it was going to be dangerous. I say this a lot, but as we're looking more and more into sending churches into places where it's illegal to be a Christian, these are the realities. These are why these stories are in there. Which is not, it doesn't matter how dangerous it gets, we need to be willing to go to those countries. One of the things that is just an outstanding feature of sheer courage here is that Paul goes back in. But I don't know if you know what stoning is. Stoning is a coward's way of killing someone. The philosophy is this, is that society says that what he's doing is wrong. But nobody wants to be the guy that pulls the trigger, right? So if we all stone him, then no one can say, I killed him. Because we really don't know which stone killed him. So it's a coward's way of really dealing with issues. And that's what they were doing to Paul. But ultimately, they didn't go and get pebbles. You know what I mean? They would just find any old sharp piece of rock and throw it. And when you're caught up into an emotion like that, you're not sort of going, let me lob one. I mean, they'd have been like throwing it, ribs would have cracked, they would have hit his head. I mean, basically, they beat him up so much that they absolutely thought that he was dead. What would you have done if he was still alive? I think I'd have got up and went, okay, I'm going to the next city. But Paul was like, no. Just because they have a go at me, I need to have the courage of God. I'm going to go back in and I'm going to have a nice night's sleep in that city. Now you think about it. They'd already thought he was a god. Okay, so Paul had that going for him, right? So now what would the conversation be as he walked back in? We are in serious trouble. We've stoned a god. Now who was afraid? And then Paul woke up in the morning. Maybe he was a bit surprised he woke up. He went, okay, what are we having for breakfast, guys? Got some halloumi, or what have you got? Some hummus over there? No problem, we'll leave it this afternoon. The people in that city must have been terrified by his courage. That's what people follow. There's a great scene in the movie Braveheart, where William Wallace has come in with all the leaders of Scotland. And William Wallace doesn't really want to lead, so he pulls Robert the Bruce aside. He goes, people don't follow titles. They follow courage. You lead a Bible talk? How courageous are you? You lead a family? How courageous are you? People follow what you do. How courageous are you for the gospel at your school, at your university, at your work, with your family? You know, family are one of those situations where you go, I don't really want to get into it, because if it goes badly, my family are going to feel really bad against me and they're going to give me a whole load of negativity. And yet, I really want my family to become Christians. Well, you've got to get into it, don't you? You've got to sit down and go, I need to talk to you about where you're at spiritually. In other words, you need to become the mature one in the family. And that's a real change for a lot of people. So I'm used to obeying my parents. But once you become a man, once you become a woman, it is your responsibility to God to get in there with your family and go, you know what, I want to have a conversation with you about where you're at spiritually. Even when we study the Bible, people, you need to be courageous. I appreciate Leo. Leo is a 4-month-old Christian.
Come on, Leo.
He doesn't go, I can't lead a Bible talk because I'm a 4-month-old Christian. He goes, I'm leading a Bible talk. You know why? Because I think I'm better than those guys. I don't mean to be proud, but I think I'm better than those guys. And, well, he's not even on staff, but I think his Bible talk has consistently brought more visitors than any other Bible talk.
Come on.
Why? He just believes he can do it.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, I was trained well in Hong Kong. I think you guys are a bit of wussy, and I'm going to go for it. It's just, you bring one, and I'll bring one, and I'll bring 3, and like, let's go!
Come on, Leo. Let's go, Leo.
Why? He's courageous.
Yeah.
He's out there all the time. Aaron says about him, I love having Leo around. He's always somebody I can evangelize with. Doesn't he go to university? Yes, he does. Then you don't find him hiding in the library. He's out there all the time helping people do it. I think we need courage in so many areas. You know, already Manny said, you know, we're doing a marathon. There's 30 people. And I arrived at the meeting this morning and went, that doesn't look like 30 people. It takes courage to do things like that. And then we're going to get into raising money. I remember we had a really fantastic time last year. So I trained everybody to do the marathon. And everybody thinks the running was the hard bit. And it is to begin with. But then we talked about raising money. And everybody's like, yeah, I want to do it. My goal is I have $3,000. And how much you got? $30. And I've got 2 weeks to go, guys. I said, come round my house. And so I said, okay, great. Everybody get a piece of paper. We're going to write up there, you know, India, what's your goal? So we put it up there. I said, we're going to lock the door. We didn't literally lock the door. Okay, you're going to stay with me until we raise the money. I said, write down every single person that you know that actually has money, which is basically every person you know. I remember speaking to and said, what about your family? What about your mum? They will never give, they've told me they will never give anything to this church. What about your grandparents? They will never give anything. So, okay, put them down. Phone them. They're in America. I don't know if they're awake. Phone them. I've got to go somewhere. I've got 10 minutes. You ain't going nowhere till you phone them. I hate you, Joe. Phone them mum. She gave me $1,000. Phone your grandparents. Okay. Phone grandma. Give me $1,000. I love you, John. This is the greatest thing in the world. That's what it takes.
Yeah.
But to have that courage, you've got to really step out in faith. What I find about people is that people are really, really amazing. They really surprise you. That story in the Bible that goes, you know, there was a father who said, son, do this, and one said, I'll do it, and then went off and did nothing. And the other guy that went, I ain't going to do it, and then he went off and did it. That's how I find the human race. So I remember raising money in London, and we go and knock on the doors of these mansions. Literally mansion, and there's a gate, there's a buzzer. Who are you, sir? Oh, I'm just a student who will raise some money. They will give you nothing. And then you go to students who are like, you know, they're sort of buying, what do you have for breakfast? 30 cents McDonald's coming. You know what I mean? Students with no money. They go, yeah, great cause. I'll give you $20. People always amaze me. You actually never know. Even when you study the Bible with people, yeah, this guy looks really fired up, and then he doesn't make it. And then you get Barrett. Remember Barrett? She'd come in like, don't want to be in church. And then she's like, oh, I love Jesus now. I mean, you remember that? I remember, do you remember that when she was in that bag? We were like, oh my goodness me. No, it wasn't, she wasn't sitting anybody. Nobody was sitting next to her. You know what I mean? But you never ever know. You've just got to be seriously bold. You've got to let nothing stop you preaching. This week, here's my challenge. Not only take on short challenge of getting 5 people there. If you work in a place, I want you to invite absolutely everybody at work. And that means your manager director as well. And if you're in a class, I want you to get there early, and at the end of your class, go, excuse me guys, teacher, I want to invite all of you to church. Just be bold. Just do, you never know. There may be somebody in those two situations go, God, send me somebody that can take me to a church. You know, it's great having Wayne and his wife here. They've come home from China. You know what? His wife was praying. I need to find a church. There are people out there like that are literally going, God, help me find a church. And the only thing that's stopping us is our lack of courage. You know, bold and effective preaching. Let's make the most of absolutely every opportunity. And let's make a decision this week, as we have such a great service, to let nothing stop you preaching every single day. Amen.